Hello, children. It's me, Mr. Simons. Today we're going to be reading The Moment Before the Gun Went Off by Nadine Gordimer. And this is for an audience of two and for the whole wide world as well. Special shout out to Dom. Okay. We've already talked about what apartheid was and is, a little bit of history of South Africa as well. If you're not up to speed on that, pause, go do some Googling, and then we'll pick up. I'm going to start reading to my friends. Okay. Maurice van der Vyver shot one of his farm laborers, dead. An accident. There are accidents with guns every day of the week. Children playing a fatal game with a father's revolver in the cities where guns are domestic objects nowadays. Hunting mishaps like this one in the country. But these won't be reported all over the world. Van der Vyver knows his will be. He knows that the story of the Afrikaner farmer, regional party leader, and commandant of the local security commando, shooting a black man who worked for him will fit exactly their version of South Africa. It's made for them. They'll be able to use it in their boycott and divestment campaigns. It'll be another piece of evidence in their truth about the country. The papers at home will quote the story as it has appeared in the overseas press. And in the back and forth, he and the black man will become those crudely drawn figures on anti-apartheid banners, units and statistics of white brutality against the blacks quoted at the United Nations. He, whom they will gleefully be able to call a leading member of the ruling party. People in the farming community understand how he must feel. Bad enough to have killed a man without helping the parties, the governments, the country's enemies as well. They see the truth of that. They know, reading the Sunday papers, that when Van der Vyver is quoted saying he is terribly shocked, he will, quote, look after the wife and children. None of those Americans in English and none of those people at home who want to destroy the white man's power will believe him. And how they will sneer when he even says of the farm boy, according to one paper, if you can trust any of those reporters, he was my friend. I always took him hunting with me. Those city and overseas people don't know it's true. Farmers usually have one particular black boy they like to take along with them in the lands. You could call it a kind of friend, yes. Friends are not only your own white people, like yourself, you take into your house, pray with in church, and work with on the party committee. But how can those others know that? They don't want to know it. They think all blacks are like the big mouth agitators in town. And Van der Vyver's face in the photograph strangely opened by distress. Everyone in the district remembers Marais van der Vyver as a little boy who would go away and hide himself if he caught you smiling at him. And everyone knows him now as a man who hides any change of expression round his mouth behind a thick, soft mustache, and in his eyes by always looking at some object in hand, leaf of a crop fingered, pen or stone picked up, while concentrating on what he is saying, or while listening to you. It just goes to show what shock can do. When you look at the newspaper photographs, you feel like apologizing, as if you had stared in on some room where you should not be. There will be an inquiry. There had better be, to stop the assumption of yet another case of brutality against farm workers, although there's nothing in doubt, an accident, and all the facts fully admitted by Van der Vyver. He made a statement when he arrived at the police station with the dead man in his bakkie. Captain Bietke knows him well, of course. He gave him brandy. He was shaking, this big, calm, clever son of Willem van der Vyver, who inherited the old man's best farm. The black was stone dead. Nothing to be done for him. Bietke will not tell anyone that after the brandy, Van der Vyver wept. He sobbed, snot running onto his hands like a dirty kid. The captain was ashamed for him and walked out to give him a chance to recover himself. Marais van der Vyver left his house at 3 in the afternoon to cull a buck from the family of kudu he protects in the bush areas of his farm. He's interested in wildlife and sees it as the farmer's sacred duty to raise game as well as cattle. As usual, he called at his shed workshop to pick up Lucas, a 20-year-old farmhand who had shown mechanical aptitude and whom Vanderwyver himself had taught to maintain tractors and other farm machinery. He hooted, and Lucas followed the familiar routine, jumping onto the back of the truck. He liked to travel standing up there, spotting game before his employer did. He would lean forward, braced against the cab below him. Vanderwyver had a rifle and 300 ammunition beside him in the cab. The rifle was one of his father's, because his own was at the gunsmith's in town. Since his father died, Beetke's sergeant wrote, passed on, no one had used the rifle, and so when he took it from a cupboard, he was sure it was not loaded. His father had never allowed a loaded gun in the house. He himself had been taught since childhood never to ride with a loaded weapon in a vehicle. But this gun was loaded. I lost my place. On a dirt track, Lucas thumped his fist on the cab roof 3 times to signal. Look left. Having seen the white ripple-marked flank of a kudu and its fine horns raking through disguising bush, Vanderwyver drove rather fast over a pothole. The jolt fired the rifle. Upright, it was pointing straight through the cab roof at the head of Lucas. The bullet pierced the roof and entered Lucas's brain by way of his throat. That is the statement of what happened. Although a man of such standing in the district, Vanderwyver had to go through the ritual of swearing that it was the truth. It has gone on record and will be there in the archive of the local police station as long as Vanderwyver lives, and beyond that through the lives of his children, Magnus, Helena, and Carol, unless things in the country get worse. The example of black mobs in the town spreads to the rural areas, and the place is burned down as many urban police stations have been. Because nothing the government can do will appease the agitators and the whites who encourage them. Nothing satisfies them in the cities. Blacks can sit and drink in white hotels now. The Immorality Act has gone. Blacks can sleep with whites. It's not even a crime anymore. Vanderwyver has a high barbed security fence around his farmhouse and garden, which his wife, Alida, thinks spoils completely the effect of her artificial stream with its tree ferns beneath the jacarandas. There is an aerial soaring like a flagpole in the backyard. All his vehicles, including the truck in which the black man died, have aerials that swing their whips when the driver hits a pothole. They are part of the security system the farmers in the district maintain. Each farm in touch with every other by radio, 24 hours out of 24. It has already happened that infiltrators from over the border have mined remote farm roads, killing white farmers and their families out on their property for a Sunday picnic. The pothole could have set off a landmine, and Vanderwyver might have died with his farm boy. When neighbors use the communication system to call up and say they're sorry about that business with one of Vanderwyver's boys, there goes unsaid. It could have been worse. It is obvious from the quality and fittings of the coffin that the farmer has provided money for the funeral. And an elaborate funeral means a great deal to blacks. Look how they will deprive themselves of the little they have in their lifetime, keeping up payments to a burial society so they won't go in boxwood to an unmarked grave. The young wife is pregnant, of course, and another little one, wearing red shoes several sizes too large, leans under her jutting belly. He is too young to understand what has happened, what he is witnessing that day, but neither whines nor plays about. He's solemn without knowing why. Blacks expose small children to everything. They don't protect them from the sight of fear and pain the way whites do theirs. It is the young wife who rolls her head and cries like a child, sobbing on the breast of this relative and that. All present work for Vanderwyver, or are the families of those who work. And in the weeding and harvest seasons, the women and children work for him too, carried, wrapped in their blankets, on a truck, singing at sunrise to the fields. The dead man's mother is a woman who can't be more than in her late 30s. They start bearing children at puberty. but she is heavily mature in a black dress between her own parents, who were already working for old Vanderwyver when Marais, like their daughter, was a child. The parents hold her as if she were a prisoner or a crazy woman to be restrained, but she says nothing, does nothing. She does not look up. She does not look at Vanderwyver, whose gun went off in the truck. She stares at the grave. Nothing will make her look up. There need be no fear that she will look up at him. His wife, Alida, is beside him. To show the proper respect, as for any white funeral, she's wearing the navy blue and cream hat she wears to church this summer. She's always supportive, although he doesn't seem to notice it. His coldness and reserve. His mother says he didn't mix well as a child. She accepts for herself, but regrets that it has prevented him from being nominated, as he should be, to stand as the party's parliamentary candidate for the district. He does not let her clothing or that of anyone else gathered closely make contact with him. He, too, stares at the grave. The dead man's mother and he stare at the grave in communication like that between the black man outside and the white man inside the cab the moment before the gun went off. The moment before the gun went off was a moment of high excitement shared through the roof of the cab, as the bullet was to pass, between the young black man outside and the white farmer inside the vehicle. There were such moments, without explanation, between them. Although often around the farmer would pass the young man without returning a greeting, as if he did not recognize him. When the bullet went off, what Vanderwyver saw was the kudu stumble in fright at the report and gallop away. Then he heard the thud behind him, and past the window saw the young man fall out of the vehicle. He was sure he had leapt up and toppled, in fright, like the buck. The farmer was almost laughing with relief, ready to tease as he opened the door. It did not seem possible that a bullet passing through the roof could have done harm. The young man did not laugh with him at his own fright. The farmer carried him in his arms to the truck. He was sure he could not be dead. But the young black man's blood was all over the farmer's clothes, soaking against his flesh as he drove. How will they ever know, when they file newspaper clippings, evidence, proof, when they look at the photographs and see his face? Guilty, guilty, they're right. How will they know, when the police stations burn with all the evidence of what has happened now, and what the law made a crime in the past? How could they know that they do not know anything? The young black, callously shot through the negligence of the white man, was not the farmer's boy. He was his son.